For example, when I go to find something to learn, I think always I look into something out health and safety, like designing thinking, many subjects to explore and how we can create connection, because I think health and safety professional needs to building or strain culture. So we need to facing the challenges for the citizens, not just the employees. So we need to explore this view, I think. Sometimes we are so in compliance, and I think we need to grow our view about all the different matter.
But we have a rule on that. The rule is simple. If it gives time back to my EHS professionals, or it gives time back to managers, then we look at it. If when we look at, so we don't digitalize for the sake of digitalization, right? So for example, I haven't bought a software platform for L'Oreal worldwide. I don't have one, right? Not one that's been bought externally. However, I have certain tools like safety improvement opportunities, which is like people, when they see something as an opportunity or a hazard, right? They have a system for reporting it, and it goes to the manager. Because for visible felt leadership, only the manager can resolve an action identified by his team. You can't delegate it to EHS or HR. It's the manager of visible felt leadership. He has to resolve it. And each manager has an objective of 90% resolution of his what we call safety improvement opportunities.
I feel like you're one of the biggest networkers that I've ever seen. So, you're, with the 1% better stuff, the ROSPA stuff, there's even more things, Safety on the Edge conference, and I'm probably forgetting a bunch of things, but there's so many things that it feels like you're either the quiet guy behind it, or you're sowing a seed and you're looking to build something that others can get benefit out. But at the end of the day, it's also this massive legacy.
Hello everyone, welcome a new episode of Headline Podcast. I'm super happy to be here. We have a special guest, and today I am Andreza Araújo, and I'm here with Tranter, Dr. Tranter, to make this special interview. And before we call our guest, I would like to call my colleague, Tranter. Hey, Tranter, how are you? What is your expectation for this conversation today?
Hi, Andreza. I love how you call me by my full name. Thanks so much for that. You make me feel very special. So I'm very excited today. We've got Malcolm Staves, and actually I've got a really cool intro for those who are listening to hear about Malcolm's background and what he's up to. But, one of the things that I'm really happy that we're doing with Headline Podcast is a combination of guests that talk about all different topics, different places where they've worked in their different experiences. And I think Malcolm might be our first global vice president of health and safety at a pretty big company. So we're going to pick his brain on what he actually does and how he thinks about certain things as well. So really happy that he's here. And, it's funny because we're getting teased for us always saying where we're located, but I'm going to say it again anyway. I'm in Seattle this week. Where are you, Andreza?
I am in Orlando today. It's a very heavy summertime here. So, but it's a beautiful day today.
Yeah. This is the beauty of our podcast is, we've got two people halfway across the US meeting with people around the world. I love hearing all the different accents and the different perspectives and cultures that everyone's bringing. And I truly hope that our audience loves this too. At the Headline Podcast, we explore the stories, strategies, and shifts behind the headlines and meet the people rewriting what leadership looks like. I'm Dr. Megan Tranter, here with my brilliant co-host, Andreza Araújo. And today we're joined by someone who is quietly and very powerfully reshaping how we think about leadership, safety, and change. Malcolm Staves is the Global Vice President of Health and Safety at L'Oreal. Ooh, I have a little bit of L'Oreal makeup. Where he leads with both clarity and conscience. But if you know Malcolm, you know this isn't just about compliance or checklists. This is all about culture. And I think, and we can ask him this, it's a little bit about legacy as well. It's about asking what kind of world are we really building and how do we make it safer, braver, and more human? And Malcolm is also the co-founder of a conference called Safety on the Edge that Andreza and I actually attended in Berkeley, California earlier this year. I think it was back in March. And this conference was amazing. And it's all about redefining what it means to lead at the front lines of risk, innovation, and transformation. And there's one metaphor that Malcolm is known for that says it all, which is the hummingbird. And if you've followed Malcolm, sometimes you see these quirky little pictures or the word hummingbird written. And I think the hummingbird is very interesting because when you think about a forest being on fire and the world feeling very overwhelming, the hummingbird doesn't freeze or flee. It flies to the water again and again, carrying one drop at a time. Not because it's easy, but because it's what it can do. And that's the kind of leader that Malcolm is. So today we're going to go deep with Malcolm on how to lead when the stakes are high, how to stay grounded when pushing boundaries, and why the future of safety might look very different from its past. Malcolm, we're so happy to have you with us.
Oh, wow. Abby, what an introduction. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be with you both today. I am really, really looking forward to this. But I just want everybody to know that I don't even know what the questions are, right? So this is going to be really cool. It's going to be really exciting. So yeah, fantastic to be with you. And I'm in Paris. So we are really sort of going global on this one. And you are both in two of my most favorite places in the world. So Seattle, I love as a place, just because I've done a lot of work there in the past. And Orlando, I just love everything to do with Disney and all the rest of it, because there's a big Star Wars place that I've not been to yet. So yeah. And of course you've got, what's it called? Kennedy Space Center as well. So, because I love space. So yeah, I'm really happy to be with you both.
Excellent. So welcome. I have a funny question to start our conversation. So curious minds wants to know, what does a global health and safety vice president does?
Wow. Can we start with an easier question? Wow. It's a very, very, very good question. So and I can only explain it from what I do at L'Oreal, right? And the most important thing is obviously, and this is going to be a standard thing now you get from everybody, is put in place the systems, the processes, the methods, the tools that are going to, protect and even improve the quality of people's life, whether it be a safety point of view, physical health, mental health, well-being. But what that requires is animating a network of health and safety professionals worldwide. It's all about developing the corporate strategy, the group strategy. And in L'Oreal, it's not just manufacturing. So it's a strategy that will work for manufacturing sites, distribution centers, research and innovation, admin sites, stores. Many people don't know we've got 3,000-ish stores worldwide. and a ton of marketing people that are out there as Salesforce and all the rest of it. So it's the whole shebang of putting the strategy in place and then deploying it through the networks. So I'm quite lucky within L'Oreal. We have around about 610 health and safety professionals worldwide. I mean, that's managers and above, and which is not even benchmarked for number of EHS professionals per 100 employees, kind of 1,000 employees. And it's then making sure that the processes are in place to support. So it's not just deciding on the strategy, it's also what do we need for support. Like, for example, we have global training programs for our EHS professionals, right? We have global training programs for all of the line managers, animated and driven by our people. So it's adding that support in that drives and maintains, I would say, our culture and our performance. So it's a whole load of things. I'm sure I've missed things in there. Also, unfortunately, well, maybe it depends how you look at it. Unfortunately, fortunately, it also involves attending a lot of meetings, right? Because everybody wants you at the meeting because there's an important decision to make at group level, which could be with purchasing people, it could be with the environmental people, the quality people, etc. It could be with anybody. And so you attend a lot of meetings whereby you've got to make decisions, right? Etc. And then on top of that, you've got to manage a team. I have a team of 5 people at corporate level at L'Oreal, an amazing team. You've got to manage those as well and help them develop. So it's a little bit like being an HR manager as well. So it's a bit of everything. It's a job that I feel very privileged to have and that I enjoy. So I don't know whether that helps. Have I missed something? Probably.
Well, interesting. I think different challenges. And when I was hearing you, I think the big challenging building a strategy or deploy strategy between systemic and holistic context. I think this is the big challenge. My view is right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, because part of developing the strategy is to put the systems, the integrated systems in place. But it has to be a system that will also work in our stores as well as our manufacturing sites. And the cultures are completely different, as you probably know. On top of that, we need to put in place the methods and the tools that manage risk, right? But not only manage risk, but also allow people to develop and allow people to develop their own autonomy around the management of risk, because you can't just be top down all the time, right? However, in L'Oreal, and I make no excuses about this, when it comes to people's lives, right, then we are extremely top down. There is no negotiation, no leaving it to people making the right decision at the right time or the wrong decision at the wrong time. When it comes to people's lives and areas whereby people can have fatalities or irreversible accidents, I'm extremely top down. Other areas, you've got to adapt, right? You've got to adapt. So your system has to allow that. And just to finish off on that one, if, for example, I have a site that's quite reactive, it's not doing the risk management well, it's in the early stages of its development, where we're extremely as an organization, very top down on them to put in place the right tools and everything that they need to start the journey. On the other hand, a site that's very mature in its culture, right, and its performance, you got to give more flexibility. You've got to be less top down with a site that is mature than with a site that's not mature. So it's almost like choosing. We call it the right tool at the right time, and it depends on your maturity, right, and where you are on our journey. However, going back, it doesn't matter how mature you are. When it comes to people's lives, we are top down, and I don't apologize for it.
Hello everyone! If you are studying about safety culture, leadership, risk perception, I would like to recommend my books. They are available in Amazon.com, and each book is an experience to go deep diving in safety culture, and I think will add value in your journey.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it. You know, when you think about leading a team like this, it just sounds incredibly complex and nuanced. And I'm sure day to day you're doing all sorts of different things, whether it's talking to the board or, being out on the factory floor. As, before we came live, you were sharing how you'd actually recently been to some of your manufacturing facilities. So tell us, what does it take to be that type of leader who can adjust between all those different situations? And how did you actually learn this?
Oh, wow. I think, it needs a little bit of confidence that the process and the people and the systems will deliver, right? That's the first thing, right? And it's also about developing a culture that accepts that things can change depending on where you are in your own individual maturity or even activity. So our tools and methods are slightly modified to suit local culture. Something that works in the United States or in, say, Brazil or in the UK may not work in Japan or China.
Yeah.
The frame works, but the actual details may not work. So we give the sites the authority to modify things so it's successful for them. So it's like, and this will answer your overall question, it's like we set the frame, but we give flexibility within the frame, right, for people to adapt things. The other thing is making sure that you have an amazing team around you, right, that are very complementary on the way they work together. And it's like a soccer team, right? Sometimes you get the best players and put them on the field and they lose every match. You sometimes have to pick the right person that wants to play in the team. Maybe you have your odd superstar, but you need to get the right balance. And it's the same with our teams. So we do everything through our teams. So, for example, with the senior leadership from the different zones across the world, we get together on a regular basis. We share what's going on, our challenges, etc. We agree on new directives and the content of new directives, which takes quite a long time sometimes to issue something new. It's very, I'm going to say, it's something I learned when I came to France, right? About the French culture, likes to discuss things before it goes forward. And I think with my English Anglo-Saxon culture, I found that right balance. How far do you go where you discuss, right? If you get everybody on board, and when do you make a decision? And I think what I've built over the years, if we're looking at me in my position, is I've connected with the people, right? I've connected and I've worked with them, and we've built what we see today in L'Oreal as a team, right? And even when we come top down on things, these webinars from my team, from the zone teams to the sites, etc. So we try to explain, give a little bit of sense of why, the sense of purpose that's behind the actual tools and the methodologies that we put in place. And what you've asked me to tell you is something that's built over years. I mean, I spend, even though I have this very nice title and I live in Paris and Paris is great, I'm 50 to 60% of my time on the road, right? I visit our sites, I connect with the people know me. I don't even have a problem if somebody in the EHS team in a factory or in a warehouse contacts me on Teams and asks me a question. I'll always reply, right? And I think that approach as well, and this is going back a little bit, part of it also comes from my roots, right? From where I was brought up, my parents lived in a very small town. Neither of my parents had any real money. And I would say that I valued everything that I got in life as I was going through when I was younger. And I was very fortunate to get to be educated. I ended up going to university. I think I was the first person in our family to go to university ever, kind of thing. But I don't think I've ever forgotten the roots and that importance of connecting with people. But it takes a long time. It takes a long time to build it, kind of thing. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And then But that, I think if I can say, I think that's almost the way it works. And I love to network as well, right? I manage 3 or 4 networks of about 40 different companies like L'Oreal, some small, some big. And you know something, a lot of what I've put in place in L'Oreal, the seeds, the starting point has come from those other companies. I mean, we call it about stealing with pride and everything. And that's what I've done. We share, we learn, we adapt, and then we apply, and it's been successful. But yeah, I'm not fully
I
answered
feel
your
like you're
question
one
there,
of the,
Megan, but you know.
you did. And then in addition, I feel like you're one of the biggest networkers that I've ever seen. So, you're, with the 1% better stuff, the ROSPA stuff, there's even more things, the Safety on the Edge conference. And I'm probably forgetting a bunch of things, but there's so many things that it feels like you're either the quiet guy behind it or you're sowing a seed and you're looking to build something that others can get benefit out. But at the end of the day, it's also this massive legacy. What really inspires you to, number one, do all this networking? Because honestly, I find it exhausting. And then number 2, all these things that you're doing and that you are supporting either through L'Oreal or through your own efforts and energy and commitment. It's just really inspiring, Malcolm.
Wow. Partly, there's a twofold thing. If you want to be successful in a business, you need to have allies within the business. And we're just talking about L'Oreal. And you need to be seen to align with the business values, right? And what the business is driving, rather than health and safety is a part, it's on its own or whatever. One of the things that is, I think, important for all the companies I've worked for is also things like how it's perceived externally, right? And L'Oreal does a lot of that kind of stuff. So I think where I am in an organization like L'Oreal, it allows me, because of its business culture, to go out there and give back, right? I mean, L'Oreal, for example, on the social side, has like a foundation which it gives money to places. L'Oreal founded and sponsors Women in Science, the UNESCO thing as well. So there was a logical thing that for me, by doing the right thing, which is definitely the right thing to do, like I have Women in Safety with what I do with ROSPA, what I've set up within L'Oreal, and what I've done with some other organizations with respect to diversity, equity, inclusion, it fits in with the business, right? Okay. And L'Oreal is also a kind of company that allows you to go out there and be yourself, right? I mean, some other companies, L'Oreal's my 10th company. My other companies have never given me that kind of flexibility and possibility to do it. And that gives me energy, right? Because I feel as if I'm contributing to the organization. Not only that, at the same time, I'm representing the profession that I love. And I'm promoting the profession that I love, health and safety, right? So, and it all just comes together. And once you're in that kind of, I'm going to say mindset, it's like a virtual circle. It just feeds me, right? The value that I get in seeing people doing well through mentorships, developing themselves, and maybe even taking a little bit of L'Oreal or what we do into their organization because we've inspired them in a certain way. It just drives me. And at the same time, I can do that because I have an amazing team. I have a team that are quite autonomous. I give them a lot of autonomy, but they deliver, right? So if I had more time in the office, maybe they would get more micromanaged and maybe it wouldn't work. But I think the balance is right. Now, if L'Oreal was not doing very well when it comes to safety performance, safety culture, and all the rest of it, then I would reduce a lot what I do externally because I would need to turn my attention to where we are and what we do in L'Oreal. But I'm completely fueled by it, and I think people that have leadership positions, if you want to call it leadership positions, and I don't like the word leadership because I think it shouldn't be people like us that say we're leaders. We should wait. It's other people that decide you're a leader, in my opinion, right? It's not ourselves. But if people are inspired by it and it allows them to do something, then it's got to be good for health and safety as a profession. It's not going to do any harm for L'Oreal and its reputation as well, though I don't do it for that kind of reason. And I meet some amazing people. Like you two, for example. I mean, if I am to be networking like I did, I would never have met either of you. Right? So and it just inspires me. But I think it's something that you have to work at, right? I don't think it's something that necessarily comes natural. I think you've got to want to give back. I don't talk about legacy because I'm not giving up yet, right? And I love what I do. So it's not legacy. It's more like continuing what I've always done and building on that, if that makes sense. I'm coming to you from the heart here, so you're not getting anything that's sort of like hard facts and all the rest of it. I'm just talking from here. So.
Oh, excellent. Inspire me. But in this direction, so let's explore what, in your opinion, makes a health and safety professional stand out. What skills does he or she possess?
Wow. I think the first thing you have
You're
to be
talking a lot
person.
about networking, autonomy, delivery.
Yeah.
So, but what do you believe?
In my heart, when you ask that question, I think you have to be a people person, right? On the first thing. So you have to value people, right? And the well-being, the safety and all the rest of it. So you have to value people. That's the first thing. I think also that you need to have a drive to want to improve, right? And I think we all start where we want to improve things in our organizations, right? And I think that's the way a lot of people start, and I think that's fine. But I think bit by bit, especially with the larger organizations, and why not the smaller ones, why not give back, right? Why not give back to society? Why not give back to our families? Because when I go into a country and we do keeping kids safe, right? Like when we went into South Africa earlier on in the year, I mean, it's not that expensive to go in and organize it, to go into schools, orphanages, take the people with you from your sites and do that for 2 or 3 days and giving safety, raising the level of awareness about risk or safety education to children, right? It's not difficult to do, right? And I sometimes almost want to pull my hair out, which is an English expression, because I don't understand why other people don't do the same thing. Because these big organizations could make a difference, right? And when you take people into this situation, can you imagine you're in a school, you're working with there's 30, 40 South African children under 11 in it. You're doing workshops with them, around about safety. You bring in some characters that they've seen on the television. In this case, we brought in Paw Patrol, right? 70 employees came in with us, and it changes the way they see health and safety. It changes their sense of purpose. It's not just about the why anymore. It's about the sense of purpose, and the sense of purpose is those children. It's our future generations. And I don't know why other people don't do that either. And I think things like that come over time because there are companies out there that are struggling. I understand there are a lot of health and safety professionals out there that don't get the support of anybody. They don't get budget and they're struggling and their focus is maybe compliance, right? But we're all on a journey. It depends on where you want to go, right? And part of the reason I think I've also got myself in this position, when I was younger, I wasn't satisfied. I was an engineer. And between us and the people that might listen to this, I don't really have any safety qualifications, right? I'm a qualified engineer. I went through productivity, site management, and all the rest of it. And I fell into the environment, right? And then they added on safety. But then I invested in myself, which I think a lot of engineers need to do as well, to go, people that go into health and safety, invest in yourself, but not just expertise, leadership skills, right? Coaching skills, mentoring skills, and develop yourself as an individual, because I think the world needs to see our profession of health and safety professionals as the great pool of leaders that they actually are. Right, and that we can get into that a little bit later. Why I think that. So I think it's a lot of things. It's not an easy question to answer. But if I was a person out there, I would, and I could turn back my life, I would still focus on, get out there, maybe do an MBA, go on to leadership training. I wish I'd had a coach early on in my career or a mentor. It just wasn't when I was coming through in the early days in health and safety. Early days, a long time ago, it wasn't normal to have a mentor. I mean, I don't think I'd have even heard of the word mentor, right? And if you needed a coach, it was because you were bad, right? Kind of thing. And all that's changed now. So yeah, I think you've got to invest in yourself as well, but not just in health and safety. I mean, I went and studied accountancy, finance, and everything because I wanted to also speak the language of the accountants and the finance people, right?
Yes.
So,
I think this is my recommendation also. For example, when I go to find something to learn, I think always I look into something out health and safety, like designing thinking, many subjects to explore and how we can create connection, because I think health and safety professional needs to building or strain culture. So we need to facing the challenges for the citizens, not just the employees. So we need to explore this view, I think. Sometimes we are so in compliance, and I think we need to grow our view about all the different matters. But I imagine that you have had many professionals wow moments in your career.
Yes.
Would you share one of these wow moments with us?
Yes. And can I do a recent one, or would you like an old one?
Feel free.
Okay. I'll do the recent one, right? And we were talking about it in the intro. I mean, I've just come back from the World Expo in Osaka, right? And during that World Expo, they integrated health and safety and well-being, right? It was the first time the World Expo had actually done that, integrated and health, safety and well-being. They had a focus on children as well. And that was a wow moment in itself, right? And I was so privileged and honored to be there. But even more so, the wow moment is that I was asked to go on stage to present Safe at Work, Safe at Home, and our Keeping Kids Safe program, right, in the World Expo, right? And there was little old me from a very small town in the north of the United Kingdom, from parents that didn't really have 2 cents to rub together, right? And there was me on this stage at World Expo with Rosper, because we have the partnership on Safe at Work, Safe at Home that for years. And this is going to sound really sort of like, I'm going to say strange, but I was stood there at one point delivering my presentation to the audience at World Expo, thinking, I just wish my mum and dad were with me. I don't know if you can relate to that, but it was such a moment, and it only happened a few weeks ago, as you know, but it's almost like the pinnacle of everything that I'd done, being there at this iconic moment in time when health and safety was integrated into the World Expo, and I had the honor to present Safe at Work, Safe at Home, Keeping Kids Safe. It was amazing.
Wow.
Amazing.
Thank you for sharing. Wow.
Yeah, no, I tell you, I mean, you cannot imagine what I felt. And the fact that my mum and dad were not there because they're no longer with us was actually quite sad as well. But I carried on stage, and nobody knows this, so this is a secret. So I had what they call sleeve garters that men used to wear in the 1950s to hold up the sleeves, right? So I had that from my dad. I had a part of my dad with me. And I had a partner, I had the ring that my mum gave me for my 18th birthday, I had that on as well. So I had a little bit of both of them with me. So it was really cool.
Hello everyone! If you are studying about safety culture, leadership, risk perception, I would like to recommend my books. They are available in Amazon.com, and each book is an experience to go deep diving in safety culture, and I think will add value in your journey.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it. Malcolm, this is beautiful. So beautiful.
Because, sorry, yeah, it's not hardcore safety.
No, but I don't think we need to talk about hardcore safety all the time. You know, one of the reasons Andreza and I wanted to have this podcast was to talk about so many different topics. And, you know, some of the guests that we've had earlier, you were talking about mentoring and coaching. And actually some of the guests that we've had are experts in mentoring and coaching, because we feel like there are these elements in the safety profession that we all could really do with some help on. But why I was saying what you said was beautiful is it reminds me of when I received the National Safety Council's Marion Martin Award for the most influential woman in safety. And I also referenced and thanked my parents and family and humble beginnings. And I think there's something very special in that, in acknowledging that, you know, people don't need to come from privilege or fancy places to be successful in their career. So, you know, when you're talking about earlier what a vice president of health and safety does, you know, and it was complex, but it was also about supporting people and having vision and strategy and being there and traveling the world, you know, being on that stage at the World Expo. I think it really shows what a profession like this can lead to when you work hard at it, like you obviously have, and also where you see what your true North Star is. So I wanted to ask you about your North Star, if that's a word that's familiar to you, and do you have a North Star that perhaps could inspire others?
I'm inspired a lot by a lady called Kathy Seabrook, right? And we've been friends for a long time. We created People Sustainability, which is now an annual conference in London, and between us and everybody else, it's free for people. It's people like us that go there, and it costs nothing. We actually get a few people to give us like a few $100s and stuff like that. When we get to about $4,000, we feed people. It's a little bit like that, but people give us the location and all the rest of it. But Kathy talks a lot about True North, right, which is the same kind of thing. And, you know, that every so often you need to have a True North test. My True North, and I think this has developed over time, right? My destination has changed. It really is. It's this. I've got two destinations, but I try to bring them together. One is, and I suppose this comes back to the legacy. I think the world is really in turmoil, right? I talk a lot about the VUCA world and the flipping of VUCA, as you probably know, and that's how you manage through VUCA. But I think in order to do that, you have to give the world and our profession clarity, right? So that we do the right things within a frame, etc. So part of my true north is actually to try and give back to the profession, right? I fell into a profession that I love, and I think giving back through People Sustainability and the People Sustainability Global Summit, plus Safety on the Edge, plus even going to conferences, I feel as if I and L'Oreal are giving back to do something. So that's part of it. The other thing is that, you know, I was shocked many years ago when we first started the work with ROSPA to find out that there's about 140 million people per year that die outside of work unnecessarily. Okay? And the biggest portion of people, of the 140 million that die unnecessarily every year worldwide, are children under 5. Right? Then it's people over 65, right? Slips, trips, and falls. Then it's young sports, young people doing, I'm going to say, at-risk sports. And then it's young drivers, right? But when I got that figure, I thought, sugar, I can make a difference. So out of that we had Safe at Work, Safe at Home. We looked for an external partner. We found ROSPA. And when I got that kind of information, I thought, this is what we need to do. And that started to give me a sense of purpose and direction outside of L'Oreal. So we created and amplified the Safe at Work, Safe at Home to go even further. And if you go to our sites, whether it's Brazil, whether it's Argentina, the United States, you'll find most of our sites now are doing things external, right? And so they're I've got 2 destinations, but unfortunately, I can keep on working towards both of them at the same time, if that makes sense. I see them a little bit being the same destination. Going back to keeping kids safe, well, saving children under 5. We then found that very quickly that it's difficult to have meaningful discussions with children under 5, right? You can have discussions with their parents. So what we did, we enlarged it to keeping kids in general, right? Because you can go into schools and have discussions with 9, 10, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, etc., different ones. So we enlarged it a little bit. But that moment with ROSPA, when I found that 140 million people die accidentally outside of work, and the majority of children under 5, the biggest portion, just knocked me for 6, right? It just really, really hit me. And again, lucky in the company that I work for, L'Oreal, they gave me the flexibility and the latitude to do something in that area and put budget into that as well. And trust me, believe me, it's not a lot of budget. I don't know whether I should be ashamed to say that. It's not a lot of budget, but we are slowly making a difference. And we only have to save one child. Just one child, or maybe 2. Anyhow. So I have 2. And it comes back to my sense of purpose as an individual.
This connection is fundamental, I think, for us. No? The connection with our purpose. Malcolm, I'd like to explore.
But if I can, and Andreza, if I can before you do, just to go wrap things up with a few things we were saying earlier. I also have drive. I'm quite a competitive person, right? I was when I was younger. So I have that drive to take L'Oreal or any company that I'm working for to be, to perform, to do well, right? I'm not going to say best in class or anything like that, because I think that would be presumptuous, but it's this continuous improvement and driving towards some kind of like destination, right? Of a good level of, if we want to call it safety culture, or a good level of performance, whatever that would look like. And I do that in everything that I do. And this came from my dad. So my dad was the kind of guy that would smooth the concrete on a construction site. That was his job, right? But he was quite philosophical in himself, I realized. And he sort of turned around to me and would say things like, at the end of the day, you can make a difference, right? And you should try, even in a small way, you should try and make the difference. And my mum would say the same to me. My mum had a massive heart. And I think it stuck with me, even though I didn't realize it at the time. But I have drive. And the other thing that my dad said, importantly, was, and this is not necessarily good, but it's also something that's driven me and it still drives me. Nobody remembers second place. You remember who won the Olympic gold, but you don't remember second. And that came in a long, long time ago. I was taking a site to ISO 14001 when ISO 14001 came in. So that's the environmental standard. So back in 96, it was a long time ago, in October, when it went from British Standard 7750, overnight it became ISO 14001. It was about October. And I was taking my site to 7750, or one site, I was helping them. And I delayed it so that they become 14,001. I thought it was logical. But I then found another site in my organization at the time, which was a big aluminium organization, was going before me, right? It was going the day after the standard 14,001 became real. So I thought, I can't have that. So I talked to BSI, the British Standards Association, for the auditors, and they said they could come in on the 7th, which was the day, if I remember right, it was going to become official, right? 14,001. I got my audits in on the 7th. They got everything in, but of course it was before, I'm going to say, a lot of the world, like in North and South America, woke up. So nobody else had gone doing the certification. I was told it was the first ever site to be 14,001 certified in the world. It was that close. But more importantly, it was the first site in my company, which was called Pechenay, which was then bought by Alcam. It was the first site in that company. So I became a name overnight. And 1.5 years later, I took over the corporate job, right? And it was just coincidence. But I think back on my dad at this idea of, nobody remembers second place. Competitive in me.
You share your motivation, your energy, your purpose. You are clear, engaged. My question now, how we maintain the team, a global team, engaging in this direction with clear purpose, with clear motivation. So what is your key to share with us, the secrets to maintain the team in this engagement? Because it's so necessary, to motivate, to make influence. We need to be engaged and motivated. So how?
So a number of things. I think the first thing, from a pure practical point of view, it's not to give everybody all the tools and the methods all at once, right? So this idea of the right tool at the right time, depending on where you are on your cultural evolution, right? We have that in place in L'Oreal, and we use a hybrid of the Bradley curve, right? The DuPont Bradley curve. I don't think it matters what kind of curve or whether it's the Hudson, whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? What matters is you have, going back to what you said, Megan, you have a destination. Your destination on the Bradley curve is interdependence, right? And then what we have is we put tools and methods along the line, and you put in place those tools and methods depending on where you are on your journey. So it's never done, right? So you're constantly in this mode of continuous improvement through to developing this culture of interdependence. Unfortunately, when you change a site manager or some of his Mancom people, they go back, right? Because the leadership has such an impact on culture, right? That you have to accept that when you change the leadership, there could be a change, right? Especially if we bring somebody in from external. So we give that focus, right? That focus. On the other hand, right, we're constantly reinventing things. So there was a program in place that L'Oreal had put in place in like 2005, for example, which was a very high level risk assessment program, but quite heavy, right? In 2018, we put it in the bin. After working with the senior leadership for health and safety worldwide, and we replaced it with a new tool. So it's that same thing of, when the poster's in front of you for so many years, you don't see the poster anymore. So you now need to change the poster. So we've got an evolution of our tools and methods that keep things fresh, right? And since about 2018, we've had a focus on this. These low probability catastrophic events that can kill somebody, irreversible accidents or something like that. And we called that program Life. And this is where the L'Oreal influence is. So we could have called it SIF or SIF program, and then everybody keeps on saying what's SIF all the time because people outside of our profession haven't got a clue. We called the program Life, and it has 271 top-down items that you comply with to the word. No deviation, right? And we called it Life. We could have called it SIF program or SIF requirements, whatever. Everybody now, doesn't matter where they are in the world, Latin America, Asia, everybody knows life is life. And it's a little bit bringing in the aspect of sales and marketing into health and safety, right? And so there's things like that. And we changed this, another risk assessment program high level. And it used to be called General SHAP, right? General Safety and Health Assessment Procedure. We love our acronyms in L'Oreal. We changed it to GAP, right? To Global Hazard Assessment Procedure, integrated quality, integrated environment as well more. However, it starts with the MANCOM on the site. The MANCOM can only ask 3 questions. Those 3 questions are quite simple. How am I going to kill somebody today because they worked for me? How am I going to give somebody an irreversible injury because they worked for me? And how is somebody going to get a terminal illness in 15 to 20 years because they worked for me? That's the only 3 questions they ask, right? And then they brainstorm on that. After they've done that, they then go out on the shop floor and they ask their teams exactly the same questions. Now, in some cultures, they don't like to say, how are you going to die today because you work for me, right? They don't like that. So they might say, how are you going to have an irreversible accident or something like that? But most of our sites actually use the word kill or how are you going to die today? Because A, it's impactful, right? Isn't it? It's impactful conversation. But secondly, you're identifying those risks that are the most important that need to be under control. And you could say, now, because of this shift that we did in 2018, by putting in place this program, we're almost saying, or it looks as if we're not bothered about the little accidents that are not potentially even serious, right? It could be nothing but a first aid case, for example. But the impact is the fact that we talk to everybody about these very high level things of what can happen. It has an impact on the way they see safety. And it has an impact, therefore, on things like the other types of incidents that can happen, whether reported or not, which is another conversation that we may have. But it sort of works. So I think going back to your question is, you keep it going by having this destination. You keep it by making sure that sites can't think that can tick the box all at one time. They need to evolve. We audit them on that as well, which is pretty tough for the sites as well. But also then you need to, some of the processes you need to reinvent. And the other thing, finally, if I can, back when we first started, everything was technical. I don't like things complicated. Get the risk sorted, put the engineering controls in place, the elimination, going back to hierarchy of controls. Get that in. Once we're doing that, and if we do that right by making sure the managers are doing the risk assessment, the employees are involved as well, you start in that journey, right? And then we push towards, now it's health and safety is driven by my manager with the support of our health and safety professionals. Then it's more we're all looking after each other kind of thing. And it's that kind of evolution, and that we actually build into our tools. So all our tools that we've developed ask 3 questions before. Is what is the role of the manager? What is the role of the EHS professional? How do we want to involve the employee? And what is the leading indicator or KPI that drives success? Every single one of our tools is that. Now, if you come into L'Oreal, you'll see lots of KPIs that drive our tools, but they seem to work. Yeah. So
excellent. I divide one question in 2, just to give you different perspective, but perspective for the same subject, okay? Looking for health and safety agenda. What is the trends that you are seeing, and how you can imagine the future of health and safety? So the trends is for this moment and the future.
Okay, the big trends at the moment that we're going through, right, is still a process of simplification of many of our requirements, right, from a top-down point of view. And we're also digitalizing, right? But we have a rule on that. The rule is simple. If it gives time back to my EHS professionals, or it gives time back to managers, then we look at it. So we don't digitalize for the sake of digitalization, right? So for example, I haven't bought a software platform for L'Oreal worldwide. I don't have one, right? Not one that's been bought externally. However, I have certain tools like safety improvement opportunities, which is like people, when they see something as an opportunity or a hazard, right, they have a system for reporting it and it goes to the manager, because for visible felt leadership, only the manager can resolve an action identified by his team. You can't delegate it to EHS or HR. It's the manager of visible felt leadership. He has to resolve it. And each manager has an objective of 90% resolution of his what we call safety improvement opportunities. So we're focusing on being more efficient with what we've got. We're focusing on the leadership more and more. We've had a big focus on leadership, but the leadership, for me, leadership drives health and safety, right? And it has to be it's not only about saying we need to lead, that leadership needs to be visible and felt. So that's why we talk about visible felt leadership, right? It's not just saying, oh, well, I'm really, really good, and you're preaching to yourself and all the rest of it. You people have got to feel it, right? And we design our programs to sort of do that. So I think at the moment we're simplification, getting better at using the things and the tools that we have. We're still struggling from what happened in COVID. A lot of companies, even though many won't admit it, went off the rails during COVID for health and for safety. Most of the health and safety professionals, rightfully so, were focusing on COVID, protecting their employees and all the rest of it. A lot of the safety tools, the safety methodologies that were in place were let go. The problem was a lot of the facilities see the performance improved, yet they were doing less on the ground safety, right? Maybe less people were at work. Putting some of our sites back onto the rails with respect to our methods and our tools is a little bit of challenge. The other challenge that we've had and that we're really dealing with at the moment is some of our tools, like our Visible Felt Leadership program that's called Measurable, has been in place since 2010. SIOs, the Safety Improvement Opportunities, 2011. And even today, between the two of them, we get about 75,000 action items, 90% to 93% resolved per year. So it's still going well, except for people had lost the sense of why the tool. What was the purpose of the tool? So what we've embarked on over the last 3 years is also on key sites doing what we call sense of purpose. So we go in and we talk about the sense of purpose of why safety, why health, and also the sense of purpose of the tool, the way it was designed, why it is the right tool at the right time, just to put them a little bit back on track, and it's working well. So that's what we're focusing on at the moment, is making sure, and I know a lot of other companies are seeing this, is a deterioration, whether it be in culture, performance, however they measure it, whatever. What we're trying to do in L'Oreal before we go too far into the future is secure that. So we stop the degradation, the rot, and we put our sites on track to make sure that we don't lose somebody. Because one of the problems that I see with a lot of professionals at the moment, and I will not allow it to happen in L'Oreal, is because we're trying to do so much now, and there's so much pressure coming from many areas, right? I'm going to say also many ideas of how safety should be done, right? The EHS professional are taking their eye away from those low probability catastrophic events that kill people, right? They're dealing with because they're great people, but they only have 24 hours in a day, right? So they have to let go something. I'm not allowing that to happen in L'Oreal, because I would rather have 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 minor accidents, right, than one death. So I have to make sure that that is secure and that remains in L'Oreal right now. So that's where we are at the moment. Looking to the future, you're probably expecting me to say AI, and I'm going to say not really. We've looked into it a lot, and I'll tell you why. One of the is that there's a lot of resistance from employees, right, when you put it into the sites, whatever. And I can understand, right? I think it'll change over the next 5-10 years, etc. And in some countries, actually having cameras that are watching you 24 hours a day is norm, right? So it depends on culture. However, what we are using AI for and trying to develop it within the EHS professionals is to enhance the individual capabilities, make them more effective and efficient by using AI as a tool, as an assistant to them, right? So it's the human element plus the AI together that can enhance, I'm going to use the word enhance, an EHS professional, down to doing something simple like using AI to create a simple training video, or using an avatar that's AI to do some training, or using a PowerPoint presentation platform that has AI in it in order to do nice, superb, and how can we be more efficient? Recently, somebody in my team, he did an audit. He uploaded an old audit into ChatGPT or the L'Oreal version. He put in his notes that he did from the audit and said, write me a report. And in 2 minutes, ChatGPT wrote his audit report, which would normally take him 4 to 5 hours. And so that's what the future on the AI side, where we're working within L'Oreal. We're also having a focus on upskilling our EHS professionals in leadership and mentoring skills. To be honest with you, as I said before, I think a lot of them have good leadership skills already. Unfortunately, a lot of people outside of our profession don't realize that. They're seen as being experts that you can put in a drawer. And one of the things that we're doing now is we don't talk about EHS experts, health and safety experts. We talk about health and safety professionals or health and safety leaders. When I have my senior network together, it's the Senior Health and Safety Leadership Network. Okay. It's changing the narrative in some respects, changing the story. So there's a big focus on that. And I also think we're going to see more and more, or doing this at the moment, is reviewing, is there any value of some of the stuff that's out there, like HOP, right? We're looking at, is there something in that we've got missed? Because it's like with things like, whether you talk about safety 1, safety 2, safety differently, HOP, none of them are new. There's nothing new in any of them. It's just repackaged stuff that's been around a long time. And I think some of them are more dangerous than others. Some of them don't have any substance behind to say, practically, what does this mean, right? However, when it comes to this part of human factors, being human, etc., I think we need to look at that more and more to make sure that we're adapting to the new world, right? The new connected world where people are expressing themselves more, and we need to take that on board. We also need to realize that, people do make mistakes, and I think we all realize that. I mean, some people turn around and say, stop blaming the employee. Between us, I don't know a single company that goes around and say, that's your fault. I mean, maybe they exist, but most of the companies I talk to do not blame the employee first off, right? So I think people that are actually saying, stop blaming the employee, they should actually stop saying that, because it's not the truth, right? And most of the people that say that, no disrespect to anybody in the room, tend to have another interest by saying that. They want to create controversy, and then maybe you then find out that they're trying to sell something, right? But so I've gone off on a tangent there. So I think coming back to look into the future, I think that we need to improve what I call the coaching, the mentoring skills, the leadership skills, and the way that the health and safety professional adapts. I think that's where I would focus. Plus, more and more transfer as much as we can for the line management to take responsibility. Again, going back to my dad. My dad said to me, Malcolm, and this was my advice for me when I first started work. He said, Malcolm, you got to remember one thing. If it's important for your boss, it's important for you. Now, I didn't know I was going to work in health and safety, and I've applied that to the way we do health and safety in L'Oreal, because I think if the bosses talk about productivity, quality, and all the rest of the stuff, and not about somebody's safety, their health, their well-being, then we're sending messages. So part of what I'm trying to do, I see the future, is expanding that and pushing that more and more into our organizations. And then finally, if I had a dream, it would be that more companies would jump on board with this approach of safe at work, safe at home, keeping kids safe, and actually export what we do outside into the local communities. So anyway, Wow. Did that answer any of your questions at all?
Yes.
Hey, Malcolm,
You
honestly,
should,
it feels...
You should just go like this if I'm talking too much.
No. Yes. It's good to hear
We
you.
love listening. Yeah, love listening. Actually, that felt like a massive masterclass in both how to lead a global team, how to build a global strategy, how you're thinking about all these things and your team and people around you. It made me curious about how you think about and how you nurture emerging leaders. So how do you even think about that with all this change going on?
Oh, I know. That's a good question. I'd like to think I have a number of ways. So when I see somebody emerging as a talent within L'Oreal, I'll be talking to, say, the zone director, EHS health and safety director. Say, okay, how do we develop this person? Do we get them on the right kind of training courses, whatever? And then eventually we'll take that kind of person and integrate them into our audits, because part of our audit is external, but our culture part is internal, and it's risk and culture at the same time. And we may put them on the culture as like a co-auditor or a trainee, but it's helping them sort of develop, but it's also giving them exposure to leadership within L'Oreal, right? On top of that, for those that are really special, for those that I think are going to really make it, to have positions like you've had, Megan, maybe have my position, or maybe even a zone position, right? I will bring them into my team for maybe 1 or 2 years, and they come into my team initially for 1 day a week, 1 day every 2 weeks. We give them specific projects we agreed with the line managers, etc. And what happens is we see how they fit in with the group, see how they work at international level now across different cultures and all the rest of it. So we see how it goes. Some of them will then, when I have a position available, they'll come into my team. So I've had 5 people already that have come through the system. They come in and then they either stay if they want to stay, or they go out. Some of them want to go back out and they'd rather be in charge of a zone because they're closer to the ground. Others have gone out and they've gone into a factory, but they've gone into production because maybe they want to be a future plant manager or something like that. So I try to bring people on board. What I've also done within the system is created a training program globally for all the EHS people. We call it EHS Excellence. And it's a 1-week program, and it's delivered by the senior EHS leaders to the EHS people, professionals coming through, just joined L'Oreal, etc. And we run about 3 or 4 of those every year. So we can identify talent, but not only that, they get to interact with other people who create their own network from the other sites. The people at zone level get to see the emerging people in their zone, because I can't have an eye on everybody all the time. So we need to trust them. So we sort of have that kind of system within L'Oreal. And even the other day when I was over in Japan, I was with the person who's responsible for EHS for a country level. And the fact that he spent a week with me and I spent a week with him, we both learned from each other, because I learn all the time, right? And then even now, the other day, he asked me a question, which was like a mentoring type of question. He just sent it to me on Teams, and I answered. And my door's always open. I have no closed doors, right? It doesn't matter where somebody is within the EHS organization. If they reach out, they ask me a question, I'll answer. Sometimes I have to be careful and say, well, look, you've got to go through your zone director and ask that one for that kind of question, because it could be, especially if there's an impact that's wider than just their site or just advice for them. So, and then externally, I mentor people. I have about 4 or 5 mentees that I have at the moment, which very often come through the Women in Safety program that we do with ROSPA, that ROSPA manage for us. That I don't know if you've ever seen it, where people sort of can, they apply through LinkedIn. they get a one-day leadership training, and then they get mentored for 12 months. So originally it was paid for by L'Oreal, and then around about 6-7 months ago, Nike joined us. So they now contribute into the system, and we put about 160 women through that at the moment, and it's working well. Some have flourished, and it's nice to see the people coming through. And that varies. I mean, the last person, one of the people that I'm mentoring at the moment is 24 years old. She's just gone into her first job from getting a master's. On the other hand, I have somebody that's 55 and looking to go to the next level in a career. And I do what I struggle with on all of this is within L'Oreal, and a lot of the people is to get that culture of mentoring, coaching in L'Oreal, right? Because we have a lot of people, especially engineers, that are very focused on the task. They don't see the bigger picture, or they don't see that they've got time. So one of my challenges in the future is to try and get them more and more into coaching and mentoring coaching and mentoring. But that needs them to be trained as well, right? Because sometimes people don't get it. They don't know how to do it, right? So sometimes they need to be coached to be a good mentor. So, but I just think it's important. And if I could turn back time as well, I would have started my mentoring early. I have about 4 mentors at the moment, different people that I talk to. They probably don't even realize that they're my mentors. Are sort of when I've got a challenge or something like that, I need to talk about something, I ring them up. And what's surprising, is that not a single one of them is male. So maybe that's helped me with the way that I've developed my part of empathy and all the rest of it, because I think some of the characteristics have maybe rubbed off on the way that I do things, that have influenced me. Can I say that? Is that all right to say that?
You can say whatever you want to say, Malcolm. We're not here to stop you. But one thing I was going to say is that we have an upcoming episode with Lisa Fain, who is the president of the International Institute for Mentoring. And just this whole conversation that we're having about coaching and mentoring, I think our viewers here might find it really interesting to listen to that podcast as well when it comes out, because it's really showing the impact that both you can have with others, but also the impact that they can have on you as a leader, as a professional, as a person, just by thinking about things differently and supporting one another in this beautiful world and the career that we all aspire to have. So I'm so glad that you've been talking about that.
It's good. And if I can as well, I think what it's done for me, it's actually improved my leadership skills generally, right? Not just as a mentor or a coach. You take on board the things exactly like you just said about, how you talk to a mentee or something like that. Well, it rubs off on you, and you start to talk to other people like that, rather than maybe being aggressive or reactive or whatever. You start thinking about it and thinking about the situation or whatever. And I think it improves your own personal leadership skills. It just doesn't help you as a mentor. That's my personal opinion. So I think people, I think when you put this together at the end, you should put the date or the link in or something like that, so everybody can go. Because I think it's good to do, and I just wish I'd done it. I started earlier, if I'm honest with you.
Hello everyone. If you are studying about safety culture, leadership, risk perception, I would like to recommend my books. They are available in Amazon.com, and each book is an experience to go deep diving in safety culture, and I think will add value in your journey.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it. Yeah, one of the things I hear you talking about also is self-awareness as a leader. So whether it's over time, whether it's through different experiences, whether it's through the impact of others that they have on you, to have a level of self-awareness that you can bring will enhance your leadership as well.
Oh, I'm totally, and I think sometimes though, I think if I'm honest with you, I very often get embarrassed, and even with these type of conversations, because it's like I don't do it because I want people to, as you said, I'd see a leader or whatever. I do it because it's just the right thing to do, if you know what I mean. And I think other people should do the same. So I think if you want to be seen as a leader because you want to be a leader, then you're not doing it for the right reasons. You shouldn't look for it. It should just come. Does that make sense? Kind of thing. And I think you should be authentic to yourself. You should be genuine. And so, yeah, I mean, being genuine, being myself gets me in a lot of trouble, or it has done, right? Sometimes I'm one of these kind of people that sort of like there's no filter sometimes between the brain and my mouth, right? And just what's in my brain comes out. But overall, I'm quite happy with that sort of the way that's developed. But I think yeah, no, I think we should promote more the value, going back to the mentoring of mentoring and coaching. And I think the EHS professionals out there should look for it more and more. I think everybody should have a mentor. And sometimes it just helps you to deal with different people and be I'm going to use the word leader, be the leader you deserve to be, right? And a part of that is, how do you deal with or mentor or coach the boss? Best training I ever went on was how to manage your boss, right? Was best training I ever did. But how do you coach and mentor and get things done through your boss? How do you collaborate and cooperate with people at your level, even inside or outside of our profession? How do you deal with the shop floor people and the people, that the canteen staff or whatever? How do you deal with them? How do you develop your relationship? And then on the other hand, we have the regulators that come in, right? Occasionally, or we have auditors that come in, and we have to change again. It's I think for an EHS professional to realize that he needs different styles of leadership, he needs different ways of dealing with all these types of people. And going back to what we said before, Andreza, that's all about continuous professional development. It's realizing that I want to be that person. That's what I want to look like. And then that person will be successful, in my opinion.
I agree.
I went off track. What was the question again, Megan?
You answered it, Malcolm. Oh, good.
Malcolm, we talked when we start about compliance. So some organizations are, just complying with health and safety. So how, in your opinion, we can moving from the operational and complying agenda to a strategy agenda to make it influence in the market that we are operating?
Wow, that's a great question. First thing, and we can have this as a discussion, I don't think any health and safety professional should ever think that they cannot comply with the law, right? It doesn't matter whether we agree with the law or whether it actually reduces injuries or anything like that. So, and I think if we don't comply, then what happens is we immediately don't have credibility with the employees. So I think the basis for some companies that try to work on, they call it safety culture, work on this, that, and the other, and yet the employees know that they're not in compliance with guarding regulations or personal, but there's no credibility. So I think it's very, very important. And I think you need to have a strategy of compliance. To actually think that everybody complies 100% with all the legislation is not the case, right? There's always deviations over time, even with having the mindset of we will comply. So it's constantly important to check, have a strategy to make sure we know about the changes in legislation. We know about how they affect us. After that, and I think at the same time, you can embark on a strategy that takes you to putting in place some basic tools that are going to drive you forward on maybe risk assessments. It could be behavioral-based safety. It could be anything, right? Whatever you think is going to work and tailor to your organization is then to put in the strategy of how do I put this in place, right? If you're dealing with a single site, that's very easy. You just decide you're going to do it, right? And maybe you decide, oh, it's not this year, it's next year because of budget, which impacts your strategy. When you're dealing with a global organization with different cultures that are different stages, then you have to have a more flexible, adaptable type of strategy. That when one site is still struggling, maybe with the first steps, then you have to accept that. You can't turn around to them and say, you're really bad, you're not very good, and all the rest of it, because this site is better than you, and it's much, much better. You've got to accept them where they are, get them to accept where they are, and help them take the next step on the journey. So the strategy, a real good strategy, allows the flexibility to be modified and adapted to each individual site that you have, right? But you have to give the frame. So very often what we do in our sites, we turn around and we have global objectives for certain, which are sort of things like all manual handling training needs to be done. You need to be at 100% on the live program, that kind of stuff, right? And that we apply to every site worldwide. Then we have some that are more flexible, that they adjust as a function of where they are in their journey. So different sites will have different objectives, right? And they're managed locally. And the strategy allows that. But the first thing is risk management. I don't care all the fancy terms of all the rest of the stuff people want to do. You've got to get your risks under control, your high risks, your medium risks. Then you can start to talk about fancy things like visible felt leadership, culture development, this, that, and on the other. But the first thing is that you've got to protect the people. And then you allow the sites. All my sites have since 2010, I've had a 5-year strategy, right? And so it changes every about 4 years. We sit down with the EHS leadership, the line management, or whatever, we change the strategy. The last time we developed strategy for 2030, right? And so it's a 7-year strategy. And why 2030? Because the business developed a 2030 strategy. So I'm aligning with the business.
Perfect.
And there we went out to approximately 200 EHS leaders worldwide. We brought our consultants in that do our risk audits and said, okay, do a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly of where are we missing. We also interviewed people, and about 40 people, EHS professionals, said, based on what you know about L'Oreal, what are you doing that L'Oreal can learn from? Or what is L'Oreal not doing that you think we should be doing? And based on that, we created our 2030 strategy, which is totally and utterly flexible to a site now to say, okay, this is where I am today. This is where L'Oreal expects me in 2030. I now build my roadmap and my action plan. And you can now have different sites that are working on different programs, right? There's no compromise on life. There's no compromise on where we can have serious excellence on NFPA worldwide, for example. There's no compromise on that. But on these things, we can compromise because it's evolution of the foundation that each individual site has. And it works. And you know something? It empowers the EHS people on the site to make decisions. Because one of the problems that you have when you have a culture like we have is if everything's top down, then where's the creativity and the innovation that comes from the site level? There isn't any. It kills it, right? Because I'm telling them this is how you do health and safety. But what you need to have is a system that allows them to, once they've evolved and they've got the basics in place, then they can take ownership, right? Then they can be creative, innovative within the frame, right? And that adds value. They feel valued. The work for our professionals becomes meaningful. Right? And then when you do that, guess what? Everybody goes the extra mile.
Yeah.
Everybody goes the extra mile. And you know, a most successful program talking about this kind of thing, Safe at Work, Safe at Home again, right? When we launched it, it was a logo and a mindset. There was no KPIs, there was no roadmap, there was no nothing, right? And it's probably the most successful program L'Oreal has ever deployed. So it's a bit of everything. It's a bit of everything, but it's not easy. You know, if I had a single site or 5 or 10 sites, I think you could have a common strategy and deploy it, and maybe they're all in one country. So it's country. or maybe 2 or 3 countries, it's easier. But when you're in 147 countries with all those different cultures, well, as you know, Megan, from your days, you're a Pepsi or Coke?
Both.
Both. Basically.
I worked for both.
And you work for both. I knew it was. I knew it was both. But you have to have that flexibility, right? And what a lot of senior people do at EHS, they very often leave it completely to the sites, right? And my experience is that doesn't really work over the long term, right? You get significant deviations. For example, I don't know if you've heard of the ATEX regulations in Europe. It's the explosion regs, right? It's like the PSM regs in the United States. I apply that worldwide because it's the best. So you take something like the US standard, we find the differences between the US standard and the European standard, and I apply the European standard, right? So that they upgrade it. If you go to a country like Korea, there's nothing. So they apply the European standard when it comes to explosions. And the simple reason is why we globalize on that kind of thing, and we have NFPAs worldwide as well, because there's no difference in the value of somebody's life, whether they're in Brazil, Argentina, China, Korea, or France. So why shouldn't organizations like L'Oreal globalize on these kind of things, irrespective of the cost that's behind it? Which it's easy for me to say, I work for a company that does okay financially, right? And I've never had a challenge on budget, and I know other people do. But I think big international companies should globalize, because you can't put a different value on somebody's life. You can't say in the US we'll have an FBA because that's the US kind of standard, but we'll put nothing into Korea, for example, because there's no standard. It doesn't work.
Hello everyone! If you are studying about safety culture, leadership, risk perception, I would like to recommend my books. They are available in Amazon.com, and each book is an experience to go deep diving in safety culture, and I think will add value in your journey.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
My last question was about learning for culture transformation. But when Malcolm was talking, I captured some lessons about culture transformation. I don't know, Malcolm, if you want to add some specific lessons about culture transformation journey around the world.
Yep. So let's start with a bit of controversy, shall we? I use the term, like probably you do and lots of other people do, about safety culture. We're all on a safety culture journey. But the real question is, what is safety culture, right? I've never worked on safety culture. If there is such a thing, it's a byproduct of everything that I've put in place. So in L'Oreal and my previous companies, I've worked on something which is actually teaching people to see risk and to react to that risk that they see, because that keeps them safe, right? I don't know whether the fancy stuff about culture and all the rest of it, whether on safety culture, whether it can. When I see some of the surveys, perception surveys and all the rest of it, that's fine, but it's perception. What I want to do is make sure that you, me, the people that work with us, they see risk in front of them and they react to that risk so that they can protect themselves. So if you want to talk about culture, what we've built in L'Oreal and I've done in my previous organizations is a risk searching culture. We take people on a journey to see risk. And our programs and the way our programs are fit around the Bradley curve take people on that journey. It's almost like rewiring people so that they see risk. And the approach has to be flexible enough, again, and adaptable enough for all countries, right? If I walked across the road in Mumbai, I probably won't get to the other side. But one of my colleagues in Mumbai that is Indian, lives in Mumbai, would have no problem because he knows all the rules, he sees the risks and all the rest of it. But somehow you can take me on a journey so I can see the risk, I know the rules, I know what's going on, and I can think of, right, oh yeah, well, there's potential risk there. It's almost like building in what people used to call dynamic risk assessments, right? And so I'd like to think I take people on that journey of rewinding them so they can see risk, because we also give them a life, is an outside of work gift as well. By taking people on this risk searching culture to help them see risk and react to the risk at work, it's actually a life gift. It's something that stays with them outside of work. It's a win-win situation. And professionals think, oh, I need to do safety culture, and they throw things at what they think is culture, what they're told is culture. I know a lot of companies that have spent millions on putting in place programs, and they weren't ready for the program. The culture wasn't ready. They were still struggling to do the basics and whatever. So I think if you work on developing that risk-searching culture in somebody's brain, it's absolutely fantastic. And then if you develop your tools to do that as well, you take people on a journey. And you'll never know how many lives you've saved or accidents you've avoided outside of work, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And, it's like with safe at work, safe at home, again, going back to that. So you do some training, I don't know, work at height training, electrical training, whatever you want to name it. Last slide brings it home, and it says, and at home. So how do you take that training that you've just learnt at work, and how could you apply it at home? And it doesn't matter whether the person applies it or not, but you've started to get them to think in a different way. It's not just about work. And then the Safe at Work, Safe at Home program and the Sense of Purpose program that we have in place is all about telling people we don't want any of them to work safely for L'Oreal, not a single one of them. Because if they want to work safely for L'Oreal, then very often they will resist the rules. They think we're only doing it for statistics, or this, whatever. But if you realize that your sense of purpose of being at home, or being at work, is to go home to your family, or to play soccer, or to ride your horses, or to walk your dog, or whatever you love to do, right? Then it's a game changer, because all of a sudden people say, yeah, I need to work safely because it's for my family. It's not for L'Oreal and the statistics. It's for my family. And I think a lot of EHS professionals, we miss that. We miss that opportunity of really getting into somebody's brain.
I think we need to make safety tangible, concrete, like return to home.
Make it personal. If it's personal, you will. That's what you got to do, and that's what we've tried to do.
And I think at this point, we connect with culture, because culture is what your values, your beliefs. So when you make it personal, you can connect with the real culture in the center. But I love your perspective, it's a life gift. Wow. I love this term today. It's a life gift. We need to give this gift for the people as a health and safety profession. Sometimes we lose this. We are so, our attention, our agenda is bureaucratic. And so I think we need to give for the people this gift.
I agree, and you're absolutely right, because think about, and I haven't got time now, but I've got I'm going to say a graph, a presentation that I do within L'Oreal that links Maslow's hierarchy of needs to culture and sense of purpose, right? And when you think about what you were talking about, culture, I mean, there's lots of cultures. There's HR culture, maybe safety culture, there's quality culture, there's business culture, there's L'Oreal culture, and all the rest of it. And they all influence each other, right? However, at the heart of it all is people, going back to being a people person, right? And an organization is nothing without its people. It's just bricks and mortar. And, I'd really I challenge very often. I don't know if you've ever said or heard people say, people are our greatest asset, right? The thing is about assets, they don't have choices. People have choices. They are not an asset, right? They have choices. And I think if you can take people and realize that the individual culture multiplied by every single person that works in an organization creates that business organization. And what's at the bottom? It's safety, security needs, right? And I think that's the and I think that's the way to develop health and safety culture. If you want to talk about risk searching culture or whatever kind of culture, you have to work on the individual level. And if an individual it doesn't feel safe, psychologically or physically, then they're not going to evolve start giving back and looking after the other people at work or at home. And I think you have to work on that. You have to work on that.
Absolutely. Wow.
And between you and I'm lucky that L'Oreal have given me the opportunity to make all this happen. And I would turn around and say that I'm proud of the journey that L'Oreal's been on and where we are. If you ask me the question, is it perfect everywhere in the world? I'm going to say no. Do we have challenges, things not being done correctly? I mean, we're 100,000 human beings, right? And all the rest of it. However, what we've recently done, I've brought in a safety scientist and a sociologist. I've opened the doors of L'Oreal sites, 5 of our sites, and I've said, okay, find out why it's working. And if it is working, and what can we put in the bin? What are we missing or whatever? From where does what we do support the safety science? Where does what we do link into sociology and psychology, etc.? And do we need to do something different so that we can adapt to where people are going and what the expectations and needs are of people, right? And it's all about the people.
So, Malcolm, this has been amazing. I've known you for a little while now, and actually I've never heard you talk like this. And you referenced a couple of times that I've worked in similar jobs to what you have. So that global vice president role of health and safety or environment health and safety. And the reason I was sitting here quietly for so long during our conversation today is really just listening to you, and what you were saying was resonating with what my experience has been as well. It's a complex role. There's so many things that you're thinking of. The way that you build a team, the way that you build strategy, the way that you influence, the way that you understand context in a business. All of this is a masterclass, and I'd really encourage anyone, whether you are early in your career and you're curious about what roles like this look like, or if you're moving along in a midpoint in your career where you're thinking, wow, I might like to do this one day. I wonder what it's going to all involve. You really have to listen to this podcast today. And Malcolm, there's one more thing. As I'm sitting here listening, there's 2 words now that I'm always going to associate with you, and I don't know if it's a paradox or not, and it is care and competition. And it sounds like from our conversation today that as a leader, you can do both and have both and be a wildly successful leader by having care, but also being competitive. So thank you so much for joining me and Andreza here today. We certainly appreciate the time and the insights that you've shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been great. Thank you.
I just add, it's a life marathon. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Competitive, but it's a life marathon. Thank you, Malcolm, for your participation. And I think I would like to invite all the people to subscribe in our channel, because we have more surprise, more special guests to be with us in these good interviews. Thank you again. Have a great day. Bye.